Morning everyone. Today I want to talk to you about stretching before and after you run. So it is a Sunday morning, it's very wet, it's been chucking it down this morning, and I'm just about, if video editor can look ahead, there's a massive great big puddle I'm about to try and circumnavigate. We have to go right round this bad boy. So onto the mud. Oh, so muddy. Oh, ridiculous. Oh, super wet feet already. Oh, you really don't want to be doing that. Oh, that was grim. But anyway, I digress. Wet feet at the beginning of a run, horrible. But anyway, so it's a very wet Sunday morning. It's all things running. It's my longish run today. So I'm going to be doing about 7.5 miles, something like that. 12, 13k-ish, something like that. So it's the day I talk about running. And this is the biggie. Just one of my good friends, Nigel, is coming past me. So I'm going to wave to Nigel. What warrior. Nigel, how are you, mate?
Yeah.
That guy is a legend. I think he's probably, I'm pretty sure he's definitely in his 60s. And he churns out 100-mile weeks like they're just normal. What a true inspiration that guy is, Nigel Norris. Big shout out to you, my friend. Anyway, so back to the case in question about stretching. Now this is super important, and the reason I say it's super important is previously when I started running, didn't bother stretching. You know, I was one of these people that didn't really get injured too often, and just thought it was a waste of time. Just put my trainers on, off I go. I got the need if you've got kind of muscles that have had tears or before, and you need to kind of stretch them before you run. Then I understood that, but I didn't think I needed it. Roll on 3 years into my running career, and the injuries I've had, well, to be fair, it's always been calf related. So, and more so than ever now, especially running barefoot style. So, stretching has become really, really important. And why do people stretch then? Well, ultimately, I'm no sports scientist or physiotherapist or any of those things, but this is just my experiences and based on a little bit of evidence. But stretching, ultimately, it's more warm up than, you know, warming up and stretching is so important, because when you're starting to do a run, especially if you go off really quick and your muscles are cold, you know, it's like oiling an engine. If you just hadn't bothered using a car for the whole winter, for example, and it just comes to the back end of winter, you haven't even turned the engine on. If you turn the engine on, it'll probably splutter, struggle to start, the battery might be flat, you know, all these types of things. And then you just think, right, I'm just going to put my foot down. It would probably be pretty disastrous, and something would probably break because it's not warmed up, it's not loosened up before you put your foot to the pedal. And I think that's quite a good analogy to use when you're starting running. If it's a cold morning in particular, warmer days not so bad because your muscles are generally warmer. But a lot of people run in the morning, and what happens in the morning is, generally speaking, you will get up, probably have a small bite to eat, and you just put your pumps on and off you go. And very little warming up of your muscles has happened then. So you're putting yourself at increased risk of injury. So stretching is really important, because what it does, it like stretches out. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you yawn and you put your arms up, because you're all stiff and tight because you've been sleeping in the same position overnight. It's a kind of similar thing with running. You need to stretch yourself out, loosen yourself up, so that when you start to run, your body's kind of more ready for it, which means it's going to be less shock, less kind of trauma on tired or stiff joints and muscles, and less chance of an injury. So that's the kind of main concept behind it. In terms of, this is pre-exercise. I'll talk to you a little bit about post-exercise towards the end and my experience. So what do you stretch? Well, if you've got the time, you should stretch everything really, because when you're running, for example, you might feel like, oh, it's only your legs that are moving, but look, my shoulders, my arms, my core is pretty straight, so my core is working, and probably neck muscles as well, keeping my head in posture. So it's a full body experience. So you should try and stretch most of your muscle groups, but clearly your legs are doing the lion's share of the work. And I've had the most issues with my calves, so I focus predominantly on my calves when I'm doing some stretching. In fact, I do little stretching elsewhere, unless it's before a race, because I'm going to be pushing myself harder than I would on a training run, so then I'll stretch more prior to start a race. But what am I looking to do is, there's a couple of different types of stretching. There's static, which is like I say, if I'm stretching my calf, I might push my hands against the wall and stretch out my back leg. I should really show you, but I'm running, so I'll try and explain it as best I can. But a calf stretch might be that, or it might be that you're standing on a step and you're putting your toes on the edge of the step and letting your calf push down below your toe level. That'll stretch your calves. Or you might be doing a press up position and one of your legs is over the other, pushing down as you arch your bum up in the air to try and get some leverage, so you're stretching your calf muscle and then switching over. But either or, they're all static stretches. So you're static and pushing. Dynamic ones are when you're doing a motion or a movement to it's like a stretch and a movement. So like a lunge, or this could be a stretch where you go down like that. That's a stretch, or it might be lunge, you know, and doing several of those before you run. Now those dynamic stretches are potentially better than the static ones, but appreciate I'll do more dynamic stuff before a race, but generally if I'm doing a training run, I'll just do some static stretches. But that's the difference between the two. So a dynamic stretch is when you're putting motion into the stretch. A static stretch is when you're pretty static or pretty fixed and you're just isolating and stretching one muscle group. The other thing that you can do before a run, and I do this quite a lot, is slap your muscles. So what I mean by that is just slap my calf muscles about, whack them back and forth, because they'll move, the motion will move, and the heat that you'll generate from the impact of a slap. You can do that on kind of loose muscles, like when it's not tense, like your calf muscles or your hamstrings. Pretty good way to warm your legs up. Lots of slapping, and you'll find that they kind of kick into gear before you actually start your run. So that's another good way of doing it. The other one is foam rolling. Rolling will stretch it out in a kind of a more rolling massage type basis. I mean, what foam rolling is generally good for is it irons out kinks and creases in your muscles, and the idea is that if you get any element of pain when you're rolling, as long as it's muscular and not tendon or ligament side of things, you should never be foam rolling your ligaments anyway, in particular. But with regards to the muscles, if you feel any kind of tenderness, you put more pressure and you roll it more, because what that is a potential weak point in a muscle which is kinked or knotted, and you need to kind of roll that out as quickly as possible. So they're the kind of different ways in which you can stretch, you know, pre-race. Post-race or post-run is all about recovery, and what will generally happen when you've done a race or a long run is when you're running in motion, you're fine, but as your muscles have built up lactic acid and you've utilised fluids in your body, you're probably a bit dehydrated. What will happen is when you stop is that your muscles will kind of seize up. You know, if you stopped after a marathon, for example, and stood still for maybe 10 minutes and then tried to move again, you'd be very much like someone who's got serious mobility issues. in the way that you move, because your muscles are just seized up whilst they're trying to recover. And so there's lots of things you can do to kind of aid your recovery here. Stretching is one, although you do want to be careful. Well, in actual fact, some people argue that stretching after exercise is more beneficial than stretching before it, because that's when your muscles will generally seize up, but quite often they're seized up before you start, or certainly tighter than they will be. For example, now when I've been running 15 minutes now, so my muscles are quite warm and loose. I do have a slight calf twinge in my right calf, and I run through my calf twinges now, but I'm very conscious of them. I certainly won't boot it, and if I feel anything again, I'll slow it right down, and I'll start my process of rehabilitating that calf muscle to try and get that injury fixed before proactively, rather than letting it go, i.e. tear, and then having quite a significant amount of time to rehabilitate myself back to full fitness. So after the event then, after the run, you know, stretching is good. I would generally do lighter stretching after the event, because your muscles have already done a lot of work. The last thing you want to do is stretch them, because what happens when you do exercise is, when your muscles are building and growing, is you're just getting loads and loads of different micro tears in your muscles when they're working. And then when you're building, you know, bodybuilders for example, using really, really heavy weights, etc., and what's happening is their muscles are tearing, controllably tearing, I might add. But then what happens, the healing process means that they heal slightly larger, and that's how you kind of build muscle mass. And same with running, although it's endurance, you're still getting those minor micro muscle tears. And I think if you stretch too rigorously at the end of a run, you're going to stretch those tears further. So I just think a light stretch is often quite useful. Often a bath can also, well, there's arguments against kind of hot baths after long runs, but I love them, because potentially the heat makes you cracked, whereas cold baths are supposed to be better for recovery. There's lots of nutrition and stuff and protein-based supplements you can take as well, which are supposed to speed up the healing of those micro muscle tears, kind of get you back running quicker. I mean, I've been running every day now for over 6 months, averaging kind of between 50 and 55 kilometres a week. So my body's kind of adapted a little bit to it now, especially as I've converted to barefoot as well, which puts new pressures on different muscle groups that a lot of traditional runners won't really experience. But I think I've conditioned my body to be able to cope with it now. So hopefully I've given you some food for thought in terms of stretching and the importance of it, stuff you can do pre and post run to try and, it's basically proactively preventing injury. That's what you're trying to do. And these things become more important the older you get. I mean, when you're younger, I'm 38 now, you know, I feel a lot more fragile than I do at my age now than I did when I was in my early 20s, for example. And also, you know your body a little bit better then, you know what the limitations are. You perhaps don't know it as well back in your younger days. But also your recovery is just far, far quicker when you're younger. So you have to do a lot more work at it the older you get, to try and make sure you maintain a high level of fitness, and that you also, you know, not doing yourself any lasting damage. So to summarise, there is differences between pre and post run stretching, and the pre-run is all about warming your muscles up, getting them loose, getting them moving, getting them engaged, so that when you do start putting a little bit of pressure on them, they're able to cope. Post running is to try and loosen them up to avoid too much muscle stiffness after the event. You're hydrating yourself, you're giving yourself nutrients to try and speed up the recovery. So that's a recuperative high level. I'm not a physiotherapist. I have an A-level PE, so I suppose I did a little bit of anatomy and physiology, but that was a long, long time ago. So I've probably forgotten huge amounts of that. And hopefully you can still hear me through this ridiculous wind. But hopefully there's some stuff here just to get you going and understanding. And, you know, my disclaimer is that if, you know, do take advice from professionals I'm not a professional in this field, so I'm just giving you my own honest opinions, experiences and stuff that has worked for me, and hopefully maybe one or two things that I mention, you know, will give you a little bit of a hack in ensuring that you kind of keep a high level fitness and not deteriorate too much. So that's pretty much it for me today. As always, if you've got any questions, drop me a message and I'll reply to every comment. If it's a bigger topic, I'll still reply, but I'll do a separate vlog episode and I'll tag you in, which I hope you find useful. If it's not for you, absolutely no drama. Just unfriend or unfollow you. I don't want to be cluttering up people's social feeds with irrelevant content. But before you do go, please make sure you subscribe to the Runpreneur YouTube channel, whereby all these feature-length videos are catalogued nice and neatly by playlist, and it's a completely free resource, and I'm sure there'll be something in there that you may find useful at some point in the future. Additionally, do make sure you join the Facebook Runpreneur community group, which is where we're going to start posting a lot of our free resources, and so hopefully there'll be some free stuff in there that will help you on your journey in entrepreneurship and running. So that's it for me today. As always, the Runpreneur blog is set up to help entrepreneurs, small business owners overcome stress, anxiety and overwhelm by utilising exercise as a mechanism to control, manage and thrive under those emotions that every single entrepreneur, small business owner experiences. The big difference between the ones that succeed and the ones that fail are how they manage these emotions. Because if you don't manage them effectively, pressure builds up, and then one of two things happens when you're working under extreme pressure, and that's the entrepreneur or the business will break, either of which is terminal to the success chances of your business. And there's an incredibly damning stat that suggests that only 1 in 10 businesses will last the test of time, which is hugely alarming for so many people wanting to start their business. And I believe a huge reason for that is for how entrepreneurs manage these entrepreneurial emotions of stress, overwhelm, and anxiety. So, my pledge to you is I have lost businesses because of this. I've had many failures, but I now have this way of dealing with these emotions. I have more on my plate now than I've ever had. I don't feel as much pressure. I feel like I manage my overwhelm, stress levels, anxiety levels extremely well now, and it allows me to take on more opportunities and become more successful along the way. So if you are one of these entrepreneurs that are feeling these pressures and you feel you've got no one to talk to, drop me a direct message. There's no sale or anything here. All I want to do is try and give you a few tips on how you can change some of your lifestyle habits to enable you to cope with these pressures more effectively. And I've always said, if this vlog can save just one entrepreneur or ensure that one business survives and continues on its path to success, then it's 1,000,000% worthwhile. So on that note, all that's left to say is stay positive, stay happy, and I'm going to go and get blown away now for the rest of the day, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.